The rain hammered against the windows of Raymond Adams' apartment as he stood frozen in his doorway, staring at the soaked figure of Michael Wood on his doorstep. Water dripped from Michael's dark hair onto the welcome mat, and his usually confident demeanor had crumbled into something raw and desperate. Just an hour ago, Michael had said he needed space to think. Now here he was, looking like he'd run through the storm to get here. "I can't do this anymore," Michael said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I can't pretend that what I'm feeling isn't real." Raymond's heart hammered against his ribs as he processed the words. For 3 years, he had been Michael's best friend, his confidant, the person Michael turned to when his relationships with women inevitably fell apart. For 3 years, Raymond had buried his feelings so deep he sometimes forgot they existed. Until moments like this, when Michael looked at him with eyes that seemed to see straight through to his soul. "Come inside," Raymond managed, stepping back to let Michael enter. "You're soaking wet." Michael stepped across the threshold, and Raymond caught the familiar scent of his cologne mixed with rain and something else, something that made Raymond's pulse quicken. The apartment suddenly felt smaller, the air charged with an electricity that had been building between them for months. Before we see how this ends, tell us where you're watching from and hype this video in the comments. But first, let me take you back to where this all began, 3 months earlier, when Raymond thought he understood exactly what his friendship with Michael meant. The morning sunlight had streamed through the kitchen windows of Raymond's apartment as he prepared coffee for two. Michael sat at the small table, his head in his hands, looking like he hadn't slept. His latest relationship had ended the night before, another in a string of failed attempts at finding something that seemed to always elude him. "She was perfect on paper," Michael had said, accepting the steaming mug Raymond offered. "Smart, beautiful, successful, everything I should want." Raymond settled into the chair across from him, wrapping his fingers around his own mug to keep them steady. "But she wasn't what you actually wanted." "That's the problem," Michael replied, looking up with those green eyes that had haunted Raymond's dreams for years. "I don't know what I actually want anymore. Every relationship feels like I'm playing a role, like I'm trying to fit into this life that doesn't quite fit me." Raymond had felt his chest tighten at those words. He'd watched Michael cycle through relationship after relationship, always seeking something he couldn't name. Meanwhile, Raymond had dated sporadically, never finding anyone who could compare to the man sitting across from his kitchen table. "Maybe you're looking in the wrong places," Raymond had suggested carefully. Michael's gaze had lingered on Raymond's face for a moment longer than usual. "Maybe I am." That conversation had planted a seed that grew slowly over the following weeks. Michael began spending more time at Raymond's apartment, showing up unannounced with takeout or just appearing on difficult days when work had been particularly stressful. Their conversations grew deeper, more intimate, touching on subjects they'd never explored before. "What do you think real love feels like?" Michael had asked one evening as they sat on Raymond's couch, a movie playing forgotten on the television. Not the kind you see in movies, but the real thing. Raymond had considered the question carefully, acutely aware of Michael's proximity on the couch. "Like coming home, I think. Like finding the missing piece of yourself you didn't even know was gone." Michael had turned to look at him then, something shifting in his expression. "Have you ever felt that way about someone?" The question had hung in the air between them, loaded with possibility and danger. Raymond had felt his carefully constructed walls beginning to crack. "Once," he had admitted quietly, "but it was complicated." "Isn't it always?" Michael had replied, and there was something in his voice that made Raymond wonder if they were still talking in hypotheticals. As the weeks passed, the tension between them had become almost unbearable. Michael would brush against Raymond when reaching for something, his touch lingering just a moment too long. During their late-night conversations, Raymond would catch Michael's gaze dropping to his lips before quickly looking away. The air between them crackled with unspoken possibilities. Then came the night that changed everything. Michael had shown up at Raymond's door at nearly midnight, his face flushed and his eyes bright with something that might have been panic or excitement. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me," Michael had said, pacing Raymond's living room like a caged animal. "Have you ever thought about kissing another man?" The question had hit Raymond like a physical blow. He'd sunk onto his couch, his mind racing as he tried to formulate an answer that wouldn't destroy their friendship. Why are you asking me that? Raymond had managed. Because I can't stop thinking about it, Michael had replied, stopping his pacing to look directly at Raymond. Because I was on a date tonight with this woman who was everything I thought I wanted, and all I could think about was how much I wanted to be here with you instead. Raymond's world had tilted on its axis. The careful balance he'd maintained for 3 years suddenly seemed as fragile as spun glass. Michael, he had started, but Michael held up a hand. I know how this sounds, Michael had continued. I know I've never shown any interest in men before, but lately I can't shake the feeling that I've been looking for the wrong things my entire life. And when I'm with you, everything feels right in a way it never has with anyone else. The confession had hung between them like a bridge neither was ready to cross. Raymond had felt his heart hammering against his ribs, hope and terror warring in his chest. What are you saying? Raymond had whispered. I'm saying I think I might not be as straight as I thought, Michael had replied, his voice shaking slightly. I'm saying that when I imagine my future, you're the only constant in it. I'm saying I've been thinking about kissing you for weeks and I don't know what to do with that. Raymond had felt tears prick at his eyes. The moment he dreamed of and dreaded in equal measure had finally arrived, and he wasn't sure he was brave enough to reach for it. I need some time to think about this, Michael had said when Raymond remained silent. This is all new for me, and I don't want to mess up our friendship if I'm wrong about what I'm feeling. And with that, he had left, leaving Raymond alone with the echo of possibilities and the weight of 3 years of hidden love. That had been this afternoon. Raymond had spent the hours since Michael left pacing his apartment, alternating between hope and despair. He'd replayed every moment of their friendship, looking for signs he might have missed, wondering if Michael's feelings were real or just confusion born from his latest breakup. Then the storm had started, and with it, the knock on his door that brought them to this moment. Now, as Michael stood dripping in Raymond's entryway, the space between them felt charged with electricity. Raymond could see the war playing out on Michael's face, the struggle between fear and desire that he knew all too well. I couldn't stay away, Michael said, his voice rough with emotion. I tried to give myself space to think, but all I could think about was you, about us, about how empty everything feels when you're not there. Raymond stepped closer, close enough to see the water droplets clinging to Michael's eyelashes, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his skin despite the cold rain. Michael, Raymond said softly, what are you telling me? I'm telling you that I've been lying to myself for years, Michael replied, his eyes never leaving Raymond's face. I'm telling you that every relationship I've had has felt like a performance because I was measuring them all against something I didn't even realize I wanted. I'm telling you that I'm terrified and exhilarated and I don't know what I'm doing. But I know I can't pretend anymore. The words hit Raymond like a wave, washing away 3 years of careful restraint. He reached up without thinking, cupping Michael's face in his hands, feeling the slight roughness of stubble against his palms. How long, Michael whispered, leaning into the touch. How long have you known? 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days, Raymond admitted, the precise count falling from his lips without hesitation. Since the night you showed up here after your first breakup and fell asleep on my couch. I woke up and saw you there, and I knew I was in love with you. I've been hiding it ever since. Michael's eyes fluttered closed, and when he opened them again, they were bright with unshed tears. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm sorry I made you wait. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. You're here now, Raymond replied, but his thumbs brushing across Michael's cheekbones. That's all that matters. The space between them seemed to shrink until they were breathing the same air. Raymond could feel Michael trembling, whether from cold or nerves he couldn't tell. I don't know how to do this, Michael admitted. I've never felt this way about a man before. I don't know the rules. There are no rules, Raymond said softly. Just us, figuring it out together. Michael's gaze dropped to Raymond's lips, and the air between them crackled with possibility. Can I, Michael started, then stopped, swallowing hard. Can I kiss you? The question hung in the air like a prayer, and Raymond felt his heart stop and restart in the space of a breath. Yes, he whispered, the word barely audible. Michael leaned forward slowly, giving Raymond every opportunity to pull away. When their lips finally met, it was soft and tentative, a question rather than a statement. But as the kiss deepened, tentative became certain, and certain became desperate. Raymond had imagined this moment countless times, but nothing had prepared him for the reality of it. Michael kissed him like he was drowning, and Raymond was air, like he'd been waiting his whole life for this exact moment. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Michael rested his forehead against Raymond's. "Wow," Michael breathed, his voice filled with wonder. That felt, he paused, searching for words. Right, it felt right. Raymond smiled, his heart so full he thought it might burst. It did feel right. It felt like coming home. They stood there for a moment, foreheads touching, sharing breath and space and the magnitude of what had just shifted between them. Outside, the storm continued to rage. But inside Raymond's apartment, everything felt calm and perfect and exactly as it should be. "I'm scared," Michael admitted quietly. "This changes everything." "I'm scared too," Raymond replied, his hands still cupping Michael's face. "But I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you." Michael smiled then, the first real smile Raymond had seen from him in weeks. "What do we do now?" he asked. "Now we figure it out together," Raymond said. "One day at a time." Michael nodded, then kissed him again, this time with more confidence, more certainty. When they broke apart, he was smiling. "I should probably get out of these wet clothes," Michael said, glancing down at his soaked shirt. Raymond felt heat rise in his cheeks at the implication, but he nodded. "I can get you something dry to wear." As Raymond went to find clothes for Michael, his mind raced with the implications of what had just happened. Everything had changed in the span of a few minutes. 3 years of hidden feelings had been laid bare, and somehow, miraculously, they were reciprocated. When he returned with dry clothes, he found Michael standing by the window, watching the storm. There was something different about his posture, something more relaxed, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. "Here," Raymond said, offering the clothes. Michael turned, and the smile he gave Raymond was radiant. "Thank you. For the clothes, for being patient with me, for not giving up on whatever this is between us." "I could never give up on you," Raymond replied honestly. As Michael changed clothes, Raymond made tea, his hands shaking slightly from the adrenaline still coursing through his system. When Michael emerged from the bathroom wearing Raymond's clothes, something in Raymond's chest clenched. There was something intimate about seeing Michael in his shirt, something that made this feel real in a way the kiss hadn't quite managed. They settled on the couch together, the space between them charged but comfortable. Michael reached for Raymond's hand, intertwining their fingers like it was the most natural thing in the world. "I need to tell you something," Michael said, his thumb tracing patterns on Raymond's knuckles. "About why all my relationships failed." "You don't have to explain anything to me," Raymond replied. "I want to," Michael insisted. "I need you to understand. Every woman I dated, I was comparing them to you. Not consciously, but subconsciously. I was looking for someone who made me laugh the way you do, someone who understood me the way you do, someone who felt like home the way you do. And when I couldn't find that, I convinced myself something was wrong with them, or with me, but never that I was looking in the wrong place entirely." Raymond felt his throat tighten with emotion. All this time, he had watched Michael struggle through relationship after relationship, never knowing he was the standard Michael was measuring everyone against. "I was so focused on what I thought I was supposed to want that I never stopped to consider what I actually wanted," Michael continued. "You were right there the whole time, and I was too blind to see it." "You see it now," Raymond said softly. "That's what matters." Michael squeezed his hand. "I see it now, I see you, and I don't want it to waste any more time pretending I don't." They talked through the night, sharing fears and hopes and dreams they'd never voiced before. Michael told Raymond about the moment he'd realized his feelings, sitting across from his date earlier that evening and wishing desperately that he was with Raymond instead. Raymond shared the agony of the past 3 years, loving someone who seemed perpetually out of reach. As the storm outside began to calm, they found themselves lying on the couch together, Michael's head on Raymond's chest, their legs tangled together. It felt natural, like they'd been doing this for years instead of hours. "What happens now?" Michael asked quietly. "With us, I mean. What do we tell people?" Raymond ran his fingers through Michael's hair, marveling at the softness of it. "We tell them we're together if that's what you want. We take it one day at a time and figure out the rest as we go." Michael lifted his head to look at Raymond. Is that what you want? To be together? More than anything, Raymond replied without hesitation. Michael smiled and leaned up to kiss him again, slow and sweet and full of promise. Then we're together, he said against Raymond's lips. The next few weeks passed in a blur of discovery and adjustment. Michael officially ended things with the woman he'd been casually seeing, explaining as gently as he could that he'd realized he was looking for something different than what she could offer. She took it better than expected, admitting she'd sensed his heart wasn't fully in their relationship. Raymond and Michael navigated their new dynamic with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Everything was familiar, yet completely different. Their easy friendship remained, but now it was layered with romance and physical affection that felt both thrilling and natural. Michael was eager to learn, asking questions about everything from how to be a good boyfriend to a man, to what Raymond liked and didn't like. His enthusiasm was endearing even when his inexperience showed. I feel like I'm learning a new language, Michael confessed one evening as they cooked dinner together. Not just the physical stuff, but the emotional stuff too. I've never felt this way about anyone before. You're doing fine, Raymond assured him, watching Michael concentrate on chopping vegetables with intense focus. Better than fine, oh, actually. Michael looked up from the cutting board, a smile playing at his lips. Really, really, Raymond confirmed, moving closer to wrap his arms around Michael from behind. You're perfect. Michael leaned back into the embrace, and Raymond marveled at how right it felt to hold him this way. I love you, Michael said quietly, the words still new enough to make Raymond's heart skip. I love you too, Raymond replied, pressing a kiss to Michael's neck. They'd said the words for the first time just a week after that first kiss, during a quiet moment on Raymond's couch. Michael had been telling a story about his day when he'd suddenly stopped mid-sentence, looking at Raymond with such intensity it made Raymond's breath catch. I love you, Michael had said, the words tumbling out like he couldn't hold them back any longer. I know it's soon, and I know this is all new for me, but I love you and I needed you to know. Raymond had felt tears prick at his eyes as he'd cupped Michael's face in his hands. I love you too, he'd whispered back. I've loved you for so long. Now, as they stood in the kitchen together, those words had become as natural as breathing. Michael turned in Raymond's arms, reaching up to kiss him softly. Dinner can wait, Michael murmured against his lips. Raymond smiled, pulling back slightly to look at Michael's wishes. The confidence that had been growing there over the past few weeks was evident, replacing the uncertainty that had marked their early days together. Can it? Raymond teased. Michael's answer was another kiss, deeper this time, and Raymond decided that dinner could definitely wait. Later, as they finally sat down to eat, Michael brought up something that had been on his mind. I want to tell my family about us, he said, twirling pasta around his fork. I know it might be complicated, but I don't want to hide this. Hide you. Raymond felt a flutter of nerves mixed with pride. Are you ready for that? It might be a lot of questions. I'm ready, Michael said firmly. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Besides, my sister already suspects something. She said I seem happier than I've been in years. You do seem happier, Raymond observed. More relaxed. I am happier, Michael replied, reaching across the table to take Raymond's hand. I feel like myself for the first time in my life. Like I finally stopped pretending to be someone I'm not. The conversation about coming out to family and friends continued over the following days. Michael approached it with the same determination he brought to everything else, researching and asking questions and making sure he understood what they might face. I know some people might not understand, he said one night, as they lay in bed together. But I also know that what we have is real and good and worth fighting for. Raymond traced patterns on Michael's chest, marveling at how natural this intimacy had become. You don't have to fight anyone, he said softly. We just have to be ourselves and let the people who matter accept us. Michael caught Raymond's hand, bringing it to his lips to press a gentle kiss to his palm. You make it sound so simple. It is simple, Raymond replied. We love each other. Everything else is just details. Michael smiled, that radiant smile that never failed to make Raymond's heart skip. I love how you see the world, he said. I love how you see us. How do I see us, Raymond asked. Like we're exactly where we're supposed to be, Michael replied. Like this was always meant to happen, and we just had to find our way to it. Raymond leaned down to kiss him, slow and thorough. Maybe we were, he said, against Michael's lips, Maybe this was always the plan, and we just had to be ready for it. 3 months after that first kiss in the rain, Raymond and Michael had settled into a rhythm that felt as natural as breathing. Michael had officially moved in, though in practice he'd been staying at Raymond's apartment most nights for weeks. Their friends had been surprised, but it's supportive, and Michael's family had been more accepting than either of them had dared hope. Raymond's sister Sandra had been particularly enthusiastic, claiming she'd always suspected Raymond was hiding something and was thrilled to finally meet the person who made her brother so happy. "I've never seen you like this," she'd told Raymond after meeting Michael for the first time. "You're glowing." Michael had fit seamlessly into Raymond's life, bringing his own energy and warmth that brightened everything around him. He'd started cooking more, discovering a passion for creating elaborate meals that he insisted on sharing with Raymond every evening. Their kitchen table had become a place of long conversations and shared dreams, an anchor point in their daily routine. On this particular evening, as rain once again drummed against the windows, they sat across from each other with steaming bowls of the soup Michael had spent the afternoon perfecting. The parallel to that first morning after Michael's breakup wasn't lost on either of them. "Remember when you used to sit there looking miserable after every failed relationship?" Raymond said, gesturing with his spoon. Michael laughed, the sound warm and unguarded. "I was such an idiot, sitting here complaining about how nothing felt right, when the answer was literally sitting across from me." "You weren't an idiot," Raymond corrected gently. "You just weren't ready to see it yet." "When do you think you knew?" Michael asked. "Not when you realized you loved me, but when you knew I might feel the same way." Raymond considered the question, thinking back over the months of subtle changes in their dynamic. "Probably that night you asked me about kissing men," he said finally. "Before that, I'd convinced myself I was imagining the tension between us." Michael reached across the table to take his hand. "I'm sorry I made you wait so long. I'm sorry I put you through that." "Don't apologize for taking the time you needed," Raymond replied, squeezing Michael's fingers. "We're here now, and that's what matters." Michael smiled, bringing Raymond's hand to his lips to press a soft kiss to his knuckles. "We are here now," he agreed, "and I plan to stay here for a very long time." After dinner, they settled on the couch together, Michael's head in Raymond's lap as Raymond read aloud from a book they'd been working through together. It was a comfortable routine they'd developed, these quiet evening hours when the rest of the world faded away and it was just the two of them. As Raymond read, he found himself occasionally glancing down at Michael's face, still amazed by the contentment he saw there. Gone was the restlessness that had marked Michael's features for years, replaced by a peace that made Raymond's chest tight with love. "What are you thinking about?" Michael asked during a pause between chapters, looking up at Raymond with curious eyes. "Just how happy you look," Raymond replied honestly. "How happy we both are." Michael sat up, shifting to face Raymond more fully. "I never knew it could feel like this," he said quietly. "I never knew love could be this easy, this right." "It's not always easy," Raymond reminded him gently. "We've just been lucky so far." Michael nodded, understanding the truth in that. "But even when it's hard, I want it to be hard with you," he said. "I want all of it with you, the easy parts and the difficult parts and everything in between." Raymond felt his throat tighten with emotion. "You have me," he said simply, "for as long as you want me." "Forever then," Michael replied without hesitation, leaning forward to kiss him softly. As they kissed, Raymond thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. All the years of hidden feelings, all the failed relationships and missed opportunities, all the careful navigation of a friendship that had always been something more. It had been worth it, every moment of uncertainty and pain, to arrive at this place of certainty and joy. When they broke apart, Michael rested his forehead against Raymond's, a gesture that had become as familiar as breathing. "I love our life together," Michael said quietly. "I love that we can sit here, reading and cooking, and just being together. And it feels like everything I ever wanted." "Me too," Raymond replied, running his fingers through Michael's hair. "This is everything I dreamed of and more." They stayed like that for a while, foreheads touching, sharing breath and space, and the quiet contentment of being exactly where they belonged. Outside, the rain continued to fall, but inside their apartment, everything was warm and safe and perfect. Eventually, they made their way to bed, moving through their nighttime routine with the comfortable synchronization of a couple who had found their rhythm. Michael brushed his teeth while Raymond washed his face. Then they switched positions, bumping into each other in the small bathroom and laughing at their own clumsiness. In bed, they curled together naturally, Michael's arm around Raymond's waist, Raymond's head on Michael's shoulder. It was the same position they'd fallen asleep in that very first night, and it still felt like the most natural thing in the world. "I have something to tell you," Michael said quietly into the darkness. Raymond felt a flutter of nerves, though Michael's tone was calm. "What is it?" "I've been thinking about the future," Michael continued. "About what I want our life to look like in 5 years, 10 years, and," Raymond prompted gently, "and I want everything with you," Michael said, his arm tightening around Raymond. "I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep next to you every night. I want to travel with you and fight with you and make up with you and grow old with you." Raymond felt tears prick at his eyes in the darkness. "I want all of that too," he whispered. "Good," Michael said, and Raymond could hear the smile in his voice, "because I'm planning on keeping you for a very long time." 6 months into their relationship, Raymond and Michael had faced their first real challenge when Michael's job offered him a promotion that would require relocating to another city. The opportunity was significant, a chance to advance his career in ways that might not come again, but it would mean leaving behind the life they'd built together, at least temporarily. They'd spent weeks discussing options, weighing the benefits against the case, exploring every possible solution. The conversations were sometimes difficult, touching on fears about long-distance relationships and concerns about career versus love. "I don't want to hold you back," Raymond had said during one particularly intense discussion. "This is your dream job, and I won't be the reason you don't take it. And I don't want to lose what we have," Michael had replied. "This job doesn't mean anything if I don't have you to share it with." In the end, they'd found a solution that worked for both of them. Raymond's job had remote options he'd never explored, and Michael's company was willing to let him work partially from their current city. It would require some travel and adjustment, but they could make it work. The decision-making process had strengthened their relationship in unexpected ways. They'd learned to communicate about difficult topics, to fight fairly and work through disagreements without damaging their connection. Most importantly, they'd proven to themselves that they were committed to finding solutions together rather than letting obstacles drive them apart. Now, as they sat in their apartment planning the logistics of their modified schedules, Raymond marveled at how naturally they'd learned to navigate challenges as a team. "We're pretty good at this relationship thing," Michael said, looking up from the calendar they'd been marking with travel dates. "We are," Raymond agreed, moving to sit beside Michael on the couch. "Better than I expected, honestly." Michael raised an eyebrow. "You had low expectations." "Not low," Raymond clarified, wrapping an arm around Michael's shoulders. "Just realistic. I know how hard relationships can be, especially when one person is figuring out their sexuality at the same time." Michael leaned into the embrace, comfortable and warm against Raymond's side. "I worried about that too in the beginning," he admitted. "I was afraid I'd wake up one day and realize this was just a phase or an experiment." "And now?" Raymond asked, though he was fairly certain he knew the answer. "Now I know this is who I am," Michael replied firmly. "You're who I am. This isn't a phase or an experiment. It's my life, and I've never been more sure of anything." Raymond pressed a kiss to the top of Michael's head, breathing in the familiar scent of his shampoo. "I'm proud of you," he said quietly, "for being brave enough to explore this, for being honest about what you wanted." "I had a good teacher," Michael replied, tilting his head to look up at Raymond. "You showed me what it looked like to be authentic, to live honestly even when it's scary." They sat together in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun set through their windows. Their apartment had truly become their space now, filled with both of their belongings and the memories they'd created together. Photos from their first vacation together sat on the bookshelf next to books they'd both read and discussed. The kitchen bore evidence of Michael's cooking experiments, while the living room showed Raymond's influence in the carefully arranged furniture and plants. "I love our home," Michael said, echoing Raymond's thoughts. "I love that we built this together." "Me too," Raymond replied, "though I have to admit I'm excited about the adventure of splitting our time between here and your new office city." Michael smiled, the expression bright with anticipation. "It'll be like having two homes, two different versions of our life. As long as we're together, I don't care where we are," Raymond said honestly. Michael turned in his arms, reaching up to cup Raymond's face in his hands. "Have I told you lately that I love you?" he asked. "Only every day," Raymond replied, smiling. "But I don't mind hearing it again." "I love you," Michael said, leaning forward to kiss him softly. "I love you, and I love our life, and I love that we figured out how to make this work. I love you too," Raymond replied against his lips. "More than I thought it was possible to love someone." As they kissed, Raymond thought about how far they'd both come from that rainy night when Michael had shown up at his door, confused and desperate and brave enough to finally speak his truth. They'd built something beautiful together, something strong enough to weather challenges and flexible enough to grow and change as they did. When they broke apart, Michael rested his forehead against Raymond's, that familiar gesture that had become their signature expression of intimacy. "Thank you," Michael said quietly. "For what?" Raymond asked. "For waiting for me," Michael replied. "For being patient while I figured myself out. For loving me even when I didn't know how to love you back." "You don't have to thank me for loving you," Raymond said softly. "That was never a choice. It was just a fact." Michael smiled, that radiant expression that still had the power to make Raymond's heart skip. "Well then, thank you for making it easy to love you back." As evening settled around them, they moved through their routine with the comfortable synchronization they developed over months of shared living. Michael started dinner while Raymond tidied up the living room, and they worked around each other in the kitchen with the easy choreography of a couple who had learned each other's rhythms. Over dinner, they talked about their plans for the weekend, about the book they were reading together, about small, daily details that had become precious simply because they were shared. These ordinary moments had become Raymond's favorite part of their relationship, the quiet domestic happiness that he dreamed of for so long. After dinner, they settled on the couch together to watch a movie, but neither of them paid much attention to the screen. Instead, they focused on each other, on the simple pleasure of being close, of having this person they loved within reach. "I keep thinking about that first night," Michael said during a quiet moment in the film. "When I showed up here in the rain, terrified and exhilarated and not knowing what I was doing." "What about it?" Raymond asked, running his fingers through Michael's hair. "I keep thinking about how brave we both were," Michael replied. "You for being honest about your feelings when I finally asked. Me for asking in the first place, for taking that leap even when I was scared." "We were brave," Raymond agreed. "And we're still being brave. Every day we choose this, choose each other." Michael turned to look at him, eyes bright with emotion. "I choose you," he said simply. "Every day, every moment, I choose you." "And I choose you," Raymond replied, leaning down to kiss him softly. As their one-year anniversary approached, Raymond found himself reflecting on the transformation their relationship had brought to both of their lives. Michael had grown into his identity with a confidence that amazed Raymond, embracing not just their relationship, but his own queerness with an enthusiasm that was infectious. He joined a support group for people discovering their sexuality later in life and had become something of a mentor to others going through similar journeys. Raymond often came home to find Michael on the phone with someone from the group, offering advice and encouragement with the same patience Raymond had shown him. "You're good at this," Raymond had observed one evening after overhearing one of these conversations. "At what?" Michael had asked, though his pleased expression suggested he knew what Raymond meant. "At helping people figure themselves out," Raymond had replied. "At being the kind of person others can trust with their confusion and fear." Michael had smiled, moving to wrap his arms around Raymond from behind as he stood at the kitchen counter. "I learned from the best," he'd said, pressing a kiss to Raymond's neck. Now, as they planned their anniversary celebration, Raymond marveled at how naturally Michael had stepped into this role of guide and support for others. It was one of the many ways their relationship had enriched not just their own lives, but the lives of people around them. "What do you want to do for our anniversary?" Michael asked, looking up from the restaurant reviews he'd been reading on his phone. "I don't need anything fancy," Raymond replied honestly. "Just you and maybe a quiet dinner somewhere we can talk without interruption." Michael smiled, setting his phone aside to give Raymond his full attention. "A year ago, if someone had told me I'd be planning an anniversary dinner with my boyfriend, I would have thought they were crazy." "And now," Raymond prompted, "now I can't imagine my life any other way," Michael replied simply. "You've become such an essential part of who I am that I can't remember what it felt like before." Raymond felt his chest tighten with emotion. "You've changed my life too," he said quietly. Not just because we're together, but because you've made me braver, more open to possibilities I never considered. Like what? Michael asked, genuinely curious. Like believing I deserve to be loved the way you love me, Raymond admitted. Like trusting that good things can happen even when you've given up hope. Michael reached for his hand, intertwining their fingers in the gesture that had become as natural as breathing. You deserve all the love in the world, he said firmly. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you know that. The rest of your life, Raymond repeated, a smile tugging at his lips. Michael's eyes widened slightly as he realized what he'd said. Then his expression settled into something determined and sure. Yes, he said firmly, the rest of my life, if you'll have me. It wasn't a proposal exactly, but it was a declaration of intent that made Raymond's heart race with possibility. Always, he replied without hesitation. They spent their anniversary at a small restaurant they'd discovered together, the same place they'd had their first official date 6 months earlier. The conversation flowed as easily as it always did, touching on memories from their first year together and dreams for the years ahead. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't shown up that night? Michael asked over dessert. If I'd been too scared to come back. Raymond considered the question seriously. I think we would have found our way to each other eventually, he said finally. Maybe it would have taken longer. Maybe it would have happened differently, but I think we were always meant to be here. You really believe that? Michael asked. I do, Raymond replied. Some connections are too strong to ignore forever. We might have fought it for a while longer, but I think we would have ended up here eventually. Michael smiled, reaching across the table to take Raymond's hand. I'm glad we didn't have to wait any longer than we did, he said. I'm glad I was brave enough to come back that night. Me too, Raymond agreed, squeezing Michael's fingers. Though I have to admit, I'm proud of how far we both come since then. As they walked home from the restaurant, hands linked and conversation flowing easily between them, Raymond thought about the journey that had brought them to this point. It hadn't always been smooth. There had been moments of doubt and adjustment, times when Michael's inexperience with men had created awkward situations, or when Raymond's own insecurities had surfaced. But they'd weathered every challenge by talking through it, by choosing to trust each other and work together towards solutions. They'd learned to fight fairly and make up thoroughly, to give each other space when needed and support when requested. Most importantly, they'd learned that love wasn't just a feeling, but a choice they made every day, a commitment to seeing the best in each other and working toward a shared future. Back in their apartment, they settled on the couch together, Michael's head in Raymond's lap as they talked about their favorite memories from the past year. Remember our first fight, Michael said, grinning up at Raymond. About the dishwasher loading technique, Raymond replied, laughing. You were so convinced your way was more efficient. It was more efficient, Michael protested, though his tone was playful. You just refused to admit it. I was being stubborn, Raymond admitted. I wasn't used to having someone else's opinion matter so much in my daily life. And I was being pushy, Michael said. I was so excited about building a life with you that I wanted to optimize everything immediately. We figured it out, Raymond pointed out, running his fingers through Michael's hair. We did, Michael agreed, just like we figured out everything else. As the evening wound down, they prepared for bed with the comfortable routine they'd perfected over months of shared living. Michael brushed his teeth while Raymond set out clothes for the next day. Then they switched tasks, moving around each other in their small space with practiced ease. In bed, they curled together naturally. Michael's arm around Raymond's waist, Raymond's head on Michael's shoulder. It was the same position they discovered that first night, and it still felt like the most natural thing in the world. Happy anniversary, Michael said quietly into the darkness. Happy anniversary, Raymond replied, pressing a soft kiss to Michael's chest. Here's to many more, Michael added, his arm tightening around Raymond. Many more, Raymond agreed, already drifting towards sleep in the warmth and safety of Michael's embrace. 2 years into their relationship, Raymond and Michael had become the couple their friends looked to as an example of what love could look like when it was built on friendship, trust, and genuine compatibility. They'd weathered Michael's job transition, a brief long-distance period, and the normal challenges of learning to build a life together. Their relationship had deepened and matured, moving beyond the initial excitement of new love into something steadier and more sustainable. They'd learned each other's rhythms and needs, developed inside jokes and shared traditions, created a life together that felt both comfortable and continuously growing. Michael had fully embraced his identity, becoming an active member of their local community and maintaining his role as a mentor to others navigating similar journeys. Raymond had found his own confidence growing as well, becoming more open about their relationship with colleagues and family, more willing to take up space as part of a couple. On this particular evening, as they prepared dinner together in their kitchen, Raymond found himself observing Michael with the same sense of wonder he'd felt in those early days. Michael moved around their kitchen with complete comfort now, humming softly as he chopped vegetables, occasionally reaching out to touch Raymond's arm or back as he passed. "What are you thinking about?" Michael asked, noticing Raymond's attention. "Just how natural this all feels now," Raymond replied honestly. "How right it is to have you here, to be building this life together." Michael smiled, setting down his knife to move closer to Raymond. "It does feel natural, doesn't it? Like we've been doing this forever." "In some ways, we have been," Raymond pointed out. "We've been important to each other for years. We just changed the context." Michael leaned against the counter beside Raymond, their shoulders touching. "Do you ever miss the simplicity of just being friends?" he asked, "before things got complicated with feelings and relationships?" Raymond considered the question seriously. "No," he said finally. "I miss the innocence of it sometimes, the way I could pretend my feelings weren't real. But I don't miss the loneliness or the feeling like I was living half a life." Michael nodded, understanding in his expression. "I don't miss it either," he said. "I miss not knowing how complicated love could be, but I don't miss feeling like something was missing from my life." They returned to their cooking, working together with the easy coordination they developed over years of shared meals. Their conversations flowed naturally from serious to playful, touching on work and friends and plans for the weekend. Over dinner, Michael brought up something that had been on his mind. "I've been thinking about the future again," he said, twirling pasta around his fork, "about what we want our life to look like in the long term." Raymond felt a flutter of anticipation. "What kind of thoughts?" "Marriage thoughts," Michael admitted, his cheeks flushing slightly. "Family thoughts. The whole traditional package, just with two men instead of the heterosexual version I used to imagine." Raymond set down his fork, giving Michael his full attention. "Tell me more about these thoughts." "I want to marry you," Michael said simply. "I want to make this official, make promises to each other in front of our families and friends. I want to wear a ring that tells the world I belong to someone and that someone belongs to me." Raymond felt his heart race with excitement and something that might have been relief. "I want that too," he said quietly. "I've wanted that for a while now, but I didn't want to pressure you." "You could never pressure me into something like that," Michael replied firmly. "This is something I want because I can't imagine my life without you in it, permanently and officially." They talked through dinner about what marriage would mean to them, what kind of ceremony they'd want, how they'd handle the practical aspects of combining their lives even more fully than they already had. The conversation was easy and natural, built on the foundation of trust and communication they'd established over years of friendship and relationship. After dinner, as they cleaned up together, Michael brought up another topic that had been on his mind. "I've also been thinking about kids," he said, loading plates into the dishwasher, "about whether that's something we want to explore." Raymond paused in wiping down the counter. "What are your thoughts on it?" "I think I'd like to be a father someday," Michael said carefully. "But only with you, only if it's something we both want and choose together." Raymond smiled, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. "I've thought about it too," he admitted. "I never seriously considered it when I was single. But with you, the idea of raising children together feels possible and exciting." They spent the rest of the evening talking about possibilities and timelines, about the different paths to parenthood available to them, and what kind of parents they thought they'd be. It was a conversation that would continue over many evenings to come, but the foundation was there, the shared desire to build something bigger than just the two of them. Later, as they lay in bed together, Michael brought up one more topic. "I want to thank you," he said quietly, his fingers tracing patterns on Raymond's chest. "For what this time?" Raymond asked, though his tone was fond rather than exasperated. "For being patient with me while I figured out who I was," Michael replied. "For loving me through the confusion and the fear and the awkward learning curve. For never making me feel like I had to be anyone other than exactly who I am." Raymond caught Michael's hand, bringing it to his lips to press a gentle kiss to his palm. "You don't have to thank me for loving you," he said softly. "That's just who you are to me, the person I love exactly as you are." Michael smiled in the darkness, leaning up to kiss Raymond softly. "I love you too," he said, "more than I ever thought it was possible to love someone." As they settled into sleep, Raymond thought about the journey that had brought them to this point. From that first rainy night when Michael had shown up at his door, confused and desperate and brave enough to speak his truth, to this moment of planning a future together, complete with marriage and children and all the beautiful complexity of a life shared. It had been worth every moment of uncertainty, every challenge they'd faced, every difficult conversation and awkward adjustment. They'd built something beautiful together, something strong enough to weather whatever came next. 3 years into their relationship, Raymond and Michael had reached a level of comfort and commitment that felt unshakable. They'd survived job changes, family dynamics, health scares, and all the normal stresses that test a relationship's foundation. Through it all, they'd proven to themselves and each other that what they'd built was strong enough to last. The proposal, when it came, was both completely expected and perfectly surprising. Michael had planned it for months, coordinating with Raymond's sister Sandra to arrange a dinner party that would bring together all their closest friends and family. But the actual moment happened spontaneously, during a quiet conversation on their balcony before the guests arrived. "I can't wait any longer," Michael had said, pulling a ring box from his pocket with hands that shook slightly. "I had this whole speech planned, but standing here with you, all I can think is that I want to spend the rest of my life making you as happy as you've made me." Raymond had felt tears spring to his eyes as Michael dropped to one knee, the gesture both traditional and revolutionary in their small apartment. "Raymond Adams," Michael had continued, his voice steady despite his obvious nerves, "will you marry me?" "Yes," Raymond had whispered, then louder, "Yes, of course, yes." The ring was perfect, a simple band that matched Raymond's style exactly. As Michael slipped it onto his finger, Raymond marveled at how right it felt, how natural it seemed to wear this symbol of their commitment. Their engagement party had been a celebration of not just their love, but their entire journey together. Friends who had watched them navigate the early days of Michael's self-discovery offered toast to their courage and persistence. Family members who had initially struggled with the relationship now spoke warmly about how obviously right they were for each other. Now, 6 months later, as they planned their wedding, Raymond found himself amazed by how seamlessly this next step felt. They'd chosen a small ceremony in the garden of a local venue, surrounded by the people who mattered most to them. The planning process had been surprisingly smooth, mostly because they agreed on all the most important elements. They wanted something intimate and meaningful, focused more on the commitment they were making than on elaborate details. Michael's enthusiasm for party planning had emerged, and he threw himself into researching venues and vendors with the same intensity he brought to everything else. "I never thought I'd be the type to care about centerpieces," Michael confessed one evening as he showed Raymond photos of different floral arrangements. "But I want everything to be perfect for our day." "It will be perfect because we'll be getting married," Raymond replied, though he found Michael's attention to detail endearing. "The flowers are just decoration." Michael smiled, setting aside his laptop to move closer to Raymond on the couch. "You're right, of course. I just want everyone to see how much this means to me, how much you mean to me. They'll see that when they watch us exchange vows," Raymond said softly. "When they see how you look at me and how I look at you." "How do I look at you?" Michael asked, curious. "Like I'm the best thing that ever happened to you," Raymond replied honestly. "Because you are," Michael said simply, leaning forward to kiss him. As their wedding day approached, Raymond found himself reflecting on the transformation their relationship had brought to both of their lives. Michael had grown into his identity with a confidence that continued to amaze Raymond, while Raymond himself had learned to trust in happiness, to believe that good things could be permanent rather than temporary. Their bachelor parties had been joint celebrations, neither of them wanting to spend their last night as unmarried men apart from each other. They'd gathered their closest friends for dinner and drinks, sharing stories and laughter until late into the night. The morning of their wedding dawned clear and bright, perfect weather for their garden ceremony. Raymond woke up in his sister's guest room, where he'd spent the night according to tradition, and immediately reached for his phone to text Michael. "Good morning, future husband," he typed. The response came back immediately. "Good morning, future husband. ready to make this official. More than ready, Raymond replied. The ceremony itself was everything they'd hoped for and more. Standing under an arch of flowers surrounded by their loved ones, Raymond felt a sense of completeness he'd never experienced before. When the officiant asked them to exchange vows, Michael went first, his voice strong and clear. Raymond, he began, 3 years ago I showed up at your door in the rain, confused and scared and not knowing what I was asking for. You could have turned me away, could have protected yourself from the mess I was about to make of both our lives. Instead, you opened your door and your heart, and you gave me the space to figure out who I really was. Michael paused, his eyes bright with emotion. You taught me what love really feels like. Not the performance I'd been giving my whole life, but the real thing. You showed me that being authentic isn't always easy, but it's always worth it. You've been my best friend, my partner, my home, and today I get to make you my husband. I promise to love you with the same patience you've shown me, to support your dreams the way you've supported mine, to choose you every day for the rest of our lives. I promise to keep growing with you, to keep discovering new things about myself and about us. Most of all, I promise to never forget how lucky I am to be loved by you. Raymond felt tears streaming down his face as Michael finished his vows. When it was his turn to speak, he took a deep breath and found his voice. Michael, he began, I fell in love with you long before you were ready to love me back. And I learned that real love means wanting someone's happiness even when it doesn't include you. I spent 3 years loving you as a friend, never imagining that someday you'd love me the way I loved you. When you finally came to me that night, when you were brave enough to speak your truth, you gave me the greatest gift of my life. Not just your love, but the chance to love you openly, completely, without hiding or pretending or holding back. You've made me braver, more hopeful, more willing to believe in good things. You've shown me what partnership really means, how two people can support each other through anything. Today, I'm not just marrying the person I love most in the world, I'm marrying my best friend, my partner in everything. The person who makes me want to be the best version of myself. I promise to love you through every change and challenge, to support you in becoming whoever you're meant to be, to choose our relationship every day even when it's difficult. I promise to never take for granted the miracle of being loved by you, and to spend the rest of my life making sure you know how precious you are to me. When they exchanged rings, Raymond felt the weight of the matching band Michael slipped onto his finger, the physical symbol of the commitment they were making. When the officiant pronounced them married and invited them to kiss, the world seemed to stop for a moment as their lips met, sealing their promise to each other. The reception was a celebration of their journey and their future, filled with laughter and dancing and heartfelt toasts from friends and family. Raymond's sister Sandra gave a speech about watching her brother find happiness, while Michael's sister talked about the transformation she'd witnessed in her brother over the past 3 years. But Raymond's favorite moment came during their first dance, when it was just the two of them swaying together while their loved ones watched with joy and approval. We did it, Michael whispered in his ear. We're actually married. We are, Raymond replied, holding him closer. Husband, husband, Michael repeated, and Raymond could hear the wonder in his voice. I love the sound of that. 5 years after their wedding, Raymond and Michael had built a life together that exceeded even their most optimistic dreams. They'd bought a house with a garden where they grew vegetables and herbs, adopted a Mao who had become their practice child, and settled into a rhythm of work and home life that felt both stable and continuously evolving. Michael's career had flourished, and he'd been promoted to a senior position that allowed him to work mostly from home. Raymond had transitioned to freelance consulting, giving him flexibility to pursue projects he was passionate about while maintaining a schedule that worked with their family plans, because they were finally ready to start a family. After years of discussion and research, they'd begun the process of adoption, working with an agency that specialized in placing children with same-sex couples. The process was lengthy and sometimes frustrating, but they approached it with the same patience and determination they'd brought to every other aspect of their relationship. On this particular evening, as they sat in their living room reviewing paperwork for their home study, Raymond marveled at how naturally they'd stepped into this next phase of their lives. Are you nervous? Michael asked, looking up from the form he'd been completing. About the adoption process or about becoming parents? Raymond replied. Both, Michael admitted. All of it. Raymond set aside his own paperwork to give Michael his full attention. Talk to me about what's worrying you. I keep thinking about how much our lives are going to change, Michael said. Not in a bad way, but just everything will be different. We won't just be responsible for ourselves and each other anymore. That's true, Raymond acknowledged, but we've handled every other major change pretty well. I think we can handle this one too. Michael smiled, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. You're right, we are pretty good at adapting to new situations. Plus, Raymond added, reaching for Michael's hand, we've been preparing for this for years. All those conversations about what kind of parents we want to be, all the research we've done, the classes we've taken. We're as ready as anyone can be. Michael squeezed his fingers, drawing comfort from the familiar gesture. I love that we're doing this together, he said. I can't imagine navigating parenthood with anyone else. Me neither, Raymond replied honestly. You're going to be an amazing father. So are you, Michael said, leaning over to kiss him softly. They returned to their paperwork, working together to complete the seemingly endless forms required by the adoption agency. It was tedious work, but they approached it as they did everything else, as a team working toward a shared goal. A few weeks later, they received the call they'd been waiting for. A young woman had chosen them to adopt her baby, a little girl due in 2 months. The news sent them into a whirlwind of preparation, setting up a nursery and buying baby supplies, and trying to absorb the reality that they were about to become parents. The day their daughter was born was the most overwhelming and joyful day of either of their lives. They were present for the birth, standing beside the brave young woman who was giving them the greatest gift imaginable. When the baby was placed in Raymond's arms for the first time, he felt his world shift completely. She's perfect, he whispered, tears streaming down his face as he looked down at the tiny person who was now his daughter. Michael stood beside him, one hand on Raymond's shoulder and the other gently touching the baby's head. She really is, he agreed, his own voice thick with emotion. They named her Emma, a name they'd chosen together months earlier. The first few weeks of parenthood were exhausting and wonderful and terrifying all at once. They took turns with night feedings, supported each other through the steep learning curve of caring for a newborn, and marveled daily at the tiny person who had completely transformed their lives. Emma was 6 months old when Michael brought up the topic that had been on both of their minds. I want to give her a sibling, he said one evening as they watched Emma play on her activity mat. Not right away, but eventually. I want her to have what we never had, a built-in best friend. Raymond smiled, not surprised by the direction of Michael's thoughts. I've been thinking the same thing, he admitted. Maybe when she's 2 or 3, we could start the process again. Michael nodded, reaching over to take Raymond's hand. I love our family, he said simply. I love what we've built together. Me too, Raymond replied, watching Emma grab for a colorful toy with determined concentration. This is everything I never knew I wanted. As Emma grew from baby to toddler, Raymond and Michael discovered new depths to their relationship. They learned to parent as a team, supporting each other through the challenges and celebrating every milestone together. They watched each other become fathers and fell in love all over again with these new versions of themselves. Emma's first word was dada, which she used indiscriminately for both of them, much to their delight. Her first steps were taken between Raymond and Michael as they sat on the floor of their living room, encouraging her to walk from one to the other. When Emma was 2, they began the adoption process again, and 18 months later welcomed a son they named James. Their family felt complete then, the 4 of them fitting together like pieces of a puzzle they'd been assembling for years. Now, as Raymond watched Michael read bedtime stories to both children, he reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. From that first rainy night when Michael had shown up at Ia's door, confused and desperate and brave enough to speak his truth, to this evening of domestic bliss with their children curled against Michael's sides as he read. It had been worth every moment of uncertainty, every challenge they'd faced, every difficult conversation and awkward adjustment. They'd built something beautiful together, a love that had grown to encompass not just each other, but the family they'd created. When Michael finished the story and tucked the children into their beds, he found Raymond waiting for him in their own bedroom, the same room where they'd spent their first night together as a couple years earlier. Good day, Michael asked, settling into bed beside Raymond. Perfect day, Raymond replied, moving closer to curl against Michael's side in the position that had become their signature expression of intimacy. I love our life, Michael said quietly, his arm tightening around Raymond. So do I, Raymond replied, pressing a kiss to Michael's chest. All of it, every beautiful, complicated, wonderful bit of it. 10 years after that first kiss in the rain, Raymond and Michael sat on their back porch watching their children play in the garden they'd planted together. Emma, siya pa yung na dati game. Emma, now 8, was teaching 4-year-old James how to identify different vegetables. Her serious expression a perfect mirror of Michael's when he was concentrating on something important. The years had been kind to them, bringing the normal challenges of marriage and parenthood, but also deep satisfaction and joy. They'd learned to navigate disagreements with grace, to support each other through career changes and family losses, to celebrate successes together and weather disappointments as a team. Their relationship had evolved and deepened, moving through different phases while maintaining the foundation of friendship and trust they'd built from the beginning. They still had their weekly date nights, still talked for hours about everything and nothing, still looked at each other with the same wonder they'd felt in those early days. Do you ever think about that night? Michael asked, following Raymond's gaze to their children. The night I showed up here in the rain. All the time, Raymond replied honestly, especially on nights like this when I look around at our life and can hardly believe it's real. Michael smiled, reaching over to take Raymond's hand in the gesture that had become as natural as breathing. I was so scared that night, he said, terrified that I was about to ruin the best friendship I had ever had. But you were braver than your fear, Raymond pointed out. That's what I remember most about that night, how brave you were to come back, to speak your truth even when you didn't know how I'd respond. We were both brave, Michael corrected gently. You were brave to love me for so long without knowing if I'd ever love you back. You were brave to take the risk when I finally asked. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching their children and reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this moment of perfect contentment. The sun was setting behind them, casting golden light across their garden and their family. I have something to tell you, Michael said eventually, his tone playful. Raymond turned to look at him, eyebrow raised. What now? I love you, Michael said, grinning. I know it's not news, but I wanted to make sure you knew. Raymond laughed, the sound warm and unguarded. Well, in that case, I have something to tell you, too. What's that? Michael asked. I love you back, Raymond replied. Have for about 10 years now, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. Michael leaned over to kiss him, soft and sweet and full of the promise of many more years together. When they broke apart, they were both smiling. Daddy, Emma called from the garden, come see what we found. They rose together, hand in hand, to join their children in discovering whatever wonder had captured their attention. As they walked across their yard toward their family, Raymond thought about the miracle of this ordinary evening, this life they'd built together through patience and love and the courage to be honest about what they wanted. Sometimes the most beautiful love stories are the ones that catch you completely off guard, he thought, watching Michael kneel beside their children to examine whatever treasure they'd discovered. Sometimes the most frightening dares lead to the most beautiful discoveries. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, the person you've been waiting for your whole life shows up at your door in the rain, ready to be brave enough to love you back. Then they're both exactly where they need to be, Raymond realized, joining his family in their small circle of wonder and joy, exactly where they've always belonged.